we both brought a lot of rejection and abandonment issues, and I realized all these years, I terrorized him. And it wasn't even about him. Wow. It was really about me. It was about my abandonment issues, my rejection. So anything that even vaguely looked like rejection, I took it times 10. And so now it's like you have to realize that, in order to be safe and to have that trust and to be able for somebody to open up and express those things to you, you have to almost be the safe for it.
Yeah.
You cannot let that out without permission.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. If you're watching this for the very first time, my name is Glenn Coleman, and I'm joined as always by my dazzling wife,
Tanya Coleman. Hey guys.
And like I said earlier, this is a podcast where we talk about all things marriage, relationships, and what have you. Pretty much anything we want to, because it's our podcast. How about that? But today, we're super duper excited because we have some very, very special guests with us, as you can see. The Guillorys.
Yes.
Mack and Rene Guillory. And we are just really excited. We're grateful and thankful for you guys to agree to sit down with us. This has been something we've been wanting to do for a while.
Yes.
And I don't want to put you guys on the spot, and I don't want to make you blush. And we talked about this before.
Yes.
We don't really believe in like maybe relationship goals and all that. But there are couples that when we look at them and we say, them, it kind of looks like they it's like, and from afar, you guys are one of the couples that we really look to and appreciate your love for each other and appreciate the way you guys do life, appreciate the way you guys do family.
Yes.
And we just want to thank you guys for being a model for us, for a family.
Yes.
You guys have beautiful kids. All doing well, and thank you for being a great model to young couples. I'm gonna say that. Young couples like us. You have anything?
No, just again, we just really appreciate it. You guys are one of those couples, and just knowing that it's not perfect tie with a bow, it's real, and what you guys share, what we can see is very real, and we connect with that. So
Thank you. We try.
We do.
And also thank you for inviting us to your beautiful home.
It's beautiful.
It's a
Thank
home.
you. Thank you. We love it.
Yeah. Again, just all things for us to aspire to. So
That's it.
So we're gonna just jump into this. So it's like, we just want you, just tell us the story of Mack and Rene.
How did you guys come to
the truest version. There's always his version.
There's a true version and a truer version.
Okay.
See, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
Funny, the true.
Okay. Well, I met Rene. I was a freshman at Northeast Louisiana University. Went there on an athletic scholarship. And believe it or not, the way I met Rene, there was another young man who was dating Rene, who they asked me to take him on a visit. So he went on an athletic visit, and he came to the school. He decided not to come to the university. For some reason he didn't sign with Northeast. But through that interaction, I did meet Rene. And later on, probably about 4 months later, during the summertime, I met her across the bridge and had a conversation with her on, was he coming back to school? She said, no, he's not coming back to school, and we don't date anymore. I said, et cetera, et cetera. From that day on the bridge, that's where I met Rene, and we started a relationship from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's true.
So fella, whoever you are, I don't know if you're watching this, man.
I know.
I'm sorry. You just lost one. It's so silly.
I
said
think
one
he was
man's
just.
loss is another man's.
Hey,
Here we are, 33 years later.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
But it definitely was one of those instances where someone was used for the introduction.
Yeah.
You know, because he's from Mama, Louisiana. I'm from Natchez, Mississippi.
Come on, Mississippi.
So we would have never crossed paths, I don't think, any other way.
Yeah.
So yes, that started our journey in 1987, 88.
Wow.
And got married in 1991. We were 21,
21.
22. Max a year younger, so I'm older.
Okay.
So we got a lot in common. You know, I have a Mississippi girl. You know,
That's right.
she's older than me.
Yes.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yep, there you go.
she was kind of dating somebody, I think.
No, it wasn't. You were dating someone when we met.
Well, all I know is the church that we met at, there was a young man who stared me down a couple times because when I got to that church, you and I started up a friendship. So I remember walking down the hallway, and it was him and his boys. They was like staring me down.
Not good.
In the church.
Yeah, in the church. So I was like, hey, I'm like, back then, Toby hadn't come out yet, but try Jesus, don't try me. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, look, I'm off stuff. So you guys been married for 30 years. 30 years of marriage. So I know there's a lot. So just kind of give us the 30,000 feet high level view. Whatever you want to share, your philosophy on marriage, family, and all things.
I would say, like most people, we were very young when we got married, and we had a lot of maturing to do, a lot of growing up to do, and we kind of grew up together, financially, through wisdom and everywhere else. We moved to several different towns. We lived in different areas. We lived in Abbeville. We've lived in Mamou, Louisiana, and we've traveled. So our relationship has come 360. You know, we've been through quite a bit together as friends, as lovers, just as a friendship. And a lot of times, early part of our marriage, the struggles, I believe, were very helpful in us coming together and going through things and appreciating things. And especially at the point now, by us going through all these different trials and tribulations, we definitely appreciate where we are at this point in our life.
And especially just to add on to that, like Mack was saying, when we got married in 1991, we had no philosophy of marriage.
No.
We just wanted to get married.
Yeah.
And so even though, we come from background where there's a religious aspect to that, and you model what you see, right? So, which is not necessarily the right thing all the time, but it's just all you know.
Right.
And so when you bring those two people together in a marriage, a lot of times we tell people, a lot of things we have learned in the last 10 plus years of our marriage than the first 20 years of our marriage. But I do believe because we had parents who were praying for us, people who were always trying to stay connected to us, every time that we wanted to do something contrary to marriage, they would always kind of intervene and remind us, that it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And so I think, and in the ends, like Max said, just talking this weekend with another couple, how important counseling is.
Yeah.
Having that neutral party come in, because after you have so many years of struggle and trial and tribulation, you want something different.
Yeah.
And sometimes the two people can't connect to do that, and they have to have another person that comes in and does that. And that helped us out tremendously. And that's not something we're afraid to share, because people shy away from that. I don't want to tell nobody my business.
Right.
And it's just not, it's such a work of the enemy to keep you in that spot.
Especially when communication, gridlock,
Right.
where both people aren't able to communicate, or both people feel that they are definitely steadfast in what they're believing. Then it's very necessary to have a godly counselor, someone that can come in and help to bridge that gap and give you strategies
Right.
on how to communicate and how to move forward, in your marriage.
I'm really glad. I'm glad to hear you guys say that. Actually, Tanya and I were just talking. She said that she was going to get a shirt that says, "I pray How does it go?
I see a counselor and I pray.
Yes.
Because you're right, and especially, unfortunately, in the African American community, number one, and then in the religious community, kind of like a double whammy. We shy away from that, and I like to think of it as just marriage is one of the only things that we have in our lives that we really aren't taught. Number one, well, I'll just say I'll call it maintenance.
Right.
We do maintenance work, and that's what I see like counseling as, or like we call it a coach, a marriage coach. Just like Coach Mack here.
Right.
You have to even the greatest basketball player. I say he's Michael Jordan. I don't know if Coach would argue with that. It would argue. I know some of you probably wouldn't, but even he would say, without Phil Jackson, there probably would not be
maximized.
Exactly, and it's really great to hear you guys say that, and we preach that. Like I said, you do house maintenance. Every 3,000 miles or whatever, we take out cars to get them checked. But when it comes to the marriage, it's kind of like we just let it. I say marriage is not set it and forget it.
No, not at all. It can't be.
And I think that's why the divorce rate is where it's at. That's why people just can't stay together. So you mentioned communication, and I would say that whenever couples call us and say, hey, we need counseling, we need coaching, I would say 85 to 90%, maybe even greater.
Probably 95% of people.
Say communication, we need to work on communication.
Right.
Could you guys talk about that a little bit and talk about maybe some struggles you had, and then maybe some techniques or things that you've developed to help you guys be better at communication?
I think I can start off. I think one of the struggles that we have with communication is that when you are reared in two different types of homes, and whatever home that may be, like I say, you bring that into your marriage because that's all you know. So the way I communicate with my husband is probably the way my mom communicated with my dad, and vice versa. So when you bring that into another environment, it was just always, Mac said it the other day, a one-up. We were never in oneness or never in unity. It was always somebody trying to do one-up on each other. And we're the same.
Right.
And we're working for the same goal. And we really had to work on not trying to because what we were doing is just tearing each other down. We weren't one-up. And so one of the things, that was one of the problems, that we had in communicating. And one of the things that we learned is that, you and I are one. And if we have made it a rule that we will not speak negative about the person in any conversation.
That's good.
And so we started with in public conversation, because you can make sly jokes about your spouse and everybody laughs, but at the end of the day, it's still about your spouse. And it's nothing funny about that. And even though you may be thinking it's for one reason, but in actuality, if you say it, that's what's in your heart. So that's where Speak Life came to me.
That's good.
That's something I learned early on. I need to speak life into every situation, into my husband, into my marriage, into my family, into my children. So my strategy was, when something negative would try to come up or come out sometimes, I would immediately be convicted, apologize to whoever that was, and start trying to just stop it before I had to really consciously count to 10.
So it's an intentional thing. So even if I'm in the moment and we get into a heated discussion, I have to walk away because I'm, Macca says she's very emotional, and sometimes women are, because our voice starts to raise, and we want to get our point across, our hands start to move, and it's not that. It's so for me, I have to take a breath, and I have to breathe, and I have a conscious 10-second count. And so then I continue to communicate. And my other strategy is I have to wait 24 hours before I make an emotional decision behind an argument. I love that.
So if we get into an argument, my first response would be to do something. I can't, that got me in trouble every time. So I have to say, okay, I'm not doing anything,
Right.
no matter how much the flesh is prompting me.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to wait, because I promise you, 24 hours later, it'll change.
Yeah,
I will have apologized.
Yeah.
He will have
Right.
apologized.
Yeah.
We have come to a consensus or a compromise. And so that's how we walked from being able to sit down, have a conversation, still may not agree, but still be able to go to sleep and love each other and wake up tomorrow and move forward.
Yeah, I think sometimes people get confused with what agreement in marriage is. Like, we have to feel the same way about every issue. We have to think the same way about every issue. That is not realistic, you know?
Yes.
But we can still come to an agreement, but not think the same way about it. But we have made an agreement, you know, because we're not the same person. We are one in spirit, but we are still two individual people.
And we were communicating about that fact 2 days ago, that even though we were one, that does not mean that as a man, I don't have distinct interests.
Right.
And as a woman, you don't have distinct interests. But yet still, we consolidate all of these things and still come together so that I can have this opportunity for space and you can have this opportunity for growth as well.
That's so good.
You know, but the scripture that says be slow to speak and quick to hear was something that really affected me, as opposed to always emotionally getting to a situation. Be slow to be cerebral, comprehend it, absorb it, and then calculate it how you're going to respond.
Yeah.
And that's helped out quite a bit, not being just so overly emotional in arguments and conversations, etc.
Yeah.
You know, being more cerebral and more spiritual,
Yeah.
it'll cause you to slow down, think a little bit because the words that we say in our relationships are probably, that's probably number one, because we have said things and we'll say things that will scar our spouses for years, and that we don't know that we've said that. So communication is very important. What we say, how we say it, and trying to deposit into the love bank as opposed to always taking withdrawals out
Come on.
emotionally
That's so
from
good.
the spouse. You know?
Yeah. That's really good. You said a couple things. The first thing you said that I think is really great, and I want to emphasize, is you talked about staying. It's okay to be individualistic. And I always say this, that I think so many times in marriage we focus so much on the two becoming one, we forget about the two.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And I think one of the beauties of marriage is the fact that we're not alike.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know the Bible's making this reference to God, but it talks about where I'm weak, he's strong. I think it's the same way. It can be the same way in marriage when we learn that a lot of times where the areas that I'm weak in, it's great to have a person who's strong and we can balance each other out, you know. And so I think that's really good. And the other thing you said, talking about being slow to speak, you know, one of the things I always say with Tanya, because you talked about the passion, that was, you know, whew.
Yes, it's real.
Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not, trying to be harsh.
And I used to tell her, don't talk to me in high voice. That's what I used to tell her. Don't, you need to bring that down an octave.
Inside voice.
Yeah.
Right.
But one of the things that helped me was stop listening to how she's saying it and listening to what she's saying. And when I begin to listen to because what she was saying was true.
Right.
You know, what she was bringing out was true. But it's the ego, my male ego, would not allow me to hear it and receive it in the way and she was saying. And she's done work on her end too. Like you said, not to be so passionate. It must be a Mississippi thing.
It must be.
It must be a Mississippi thing.
It must be. Yeah.
But for me, that's one of the things that I really have to do is stop. It's like, stop listening to how you're so concerned with how she's saying it. If you would just listen to what she's saying and fix what she's saying, then she won't even have to get to that point. So as the man in the relationship, as the leader, I said, you know what? I'm going to take that step and put my ego aside. And that's not an easy thing to do. You know, so for me, that was really good. Be slow to speak.
Yeah, that was great. And I mean, for me, the same thing. I just had to remember that I want to honor him. You know, I don't want to disrespect him because I know as a man, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
And so I don't want to be disrespectful, but yet I do have the right to my opinion and to say how I feel. And so just adjusting the tone.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little
Or
bit.
just being conscious of it.
And being
Yeah.
very
Being
conscious of it. Yes.
Because like Glenn said, Mac will remind me, okay, you talking to me loud now, you need
Right.
to calm down.
Right.
And so you go, I'm not loud, you know.
Exactly.
Still loud.
That is hilarious.
Until it hits, you know,
Right.
the brain
Yeah.
registered it, you
Right.
might be loud.
Yeah, that is
Yes.
hilarious. Yeah. So what are some areas you would say that you really know or have recognized? You used the word awareness. You know, you became aware of this area that you really had to do some growing in, and you knew that okay, if 15 years in, or 20 years, wherever it was, you said, okay, if I want this to last to 30, then I'm definitely going to have to grow or get some help, get some coaching, get some counseling in this area. I know we talked about communication. What are some other things that you recognize that you had to areas that you needed to grow in?
Just as a man, self-discipline.
Okay.
Surrounding yourself with people that have similar interests, and especially couples who are pro-marriage. You know, if you're a married person, it's just not realistic to surround yourself with a lot of people who don't have the same interests. It's just a natural divisive situation. So I think that in friendships and people that you're around, it really helps when you have people who have the similar interests. I'm not saying that it's necessary to hang around all married couples, but you need to hang around people that have a similar interest. You know, if not, the temptations will be, you'll put yourself in situations where you don't want to be in by just the natural logistics of being with that crowd.
And the dynamics. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, 15 years, you get there and you go like, okay, I've been married 15 years. What do I need to focus on and change? And honestly, I can honestly say 15 years into my marriage, I was perfect. I ain't need to change nothing. That was the problem.
Okay, got it.
Because that creates some problems.
Yeah.
Because, we always right.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine that, bringing that drama every day into a situation? Because you have, and I want people to realize, whether you're starting out and you've been married 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, everybody doesn't come out the gate knowing exactly who they are.
Yes.
I'm sorry, let me correct you right there. Nobody comes out of the gate.
That's right.
Nobody.
And I mean, the self-awareness that I had to have had, there were things going on that didn't even come from Matt, but it affected my marriage, and it was just, oh my God, who am I? Who's a part of me? Where am I? I became Coach Mack's wife for so long. My identity was Coach Mack's wife and the mother of his children, period. So, and I worked for, multi-million-dollar companies. I would go and sit in boardrooms. But when I left that, I would be somebody else. It was almost like I couldn't integrate the two. That strong, intelligent woman sitting in the boardroom in Northrop Grumman couldn't come back to being that same person in the house. It's like I couldn't adjust.
Yeah.
So you came home with that.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to deal with that all day. And so that was my thing. Once I realized that, God, I can't expect him to treat me well or do all these expectations I have of him when I don't even know what that is.
Right.
And so the self-awareness for me and my self-value and my self-worth, it really became a conscious work of making me a better person, because I truly believe once that happened, then everything else around me would change. But that took 20 years into our marriage, literally. 20,
So for
20
the
years.
couple that's 5 years in, 10 years in, who's struggling, like there is still hope, but we have to focus on ourselves.
Yes.
And you both gave, things that you had to work on individually to make the marriage work.
Because that's the, and I can speak to that too. That's the revelation that hit us, going into that last 10 years of our marriage, 2011, 12, 13, where things really, we had been married 20 years. And I listened to people who say, I just can't do this anymore. I've been married 20 years. It's got to be some. No, there's not. I want to tell them, just because you can't put a time frame on marriage.
Right.
You have to be able to, because Mack is opposite from me. And I want to run. I want to get away. I don't want to deal with it. I just want, Mack, he's like a dog with a bone. Once he commits his mind, he commits, and he will not allow you to quit. And so I think when you're in a marriage and you have opposites, that's good. Because if he was just like me, we'd probably be divorced.
Wow.
But because he wasn't, and he had a stronger commitment than I did at the time, and he saw things I couldn't see. Because of the things he had experienced also.
Right.
I think, and I don't want to, I hope people hear my heart on this, but what you're saying, and one of the things that we really want to do is normalize the struggle. Because I think for a lot of people, when they get married, they, people say it's going to be hard, but I don't think people really understand. And when something that you just said, when something like that comes up, so here you have this powerful CEO executive coming home, and like you said, I'm these people at work, they worship the ground that I walk on. But when I come home, it's like in your mind, you're not getting that respect. That can be a huge, and so what I want you to know is that it's okay, and that's a, I don't want to say normal, what's another word, but that's something that may come up.
Normal conflict.
The thing that you have to do is get help.
You have to recognize.
You have to recognize.
You have to get help. And you have to get somebody in. And it can't. It's never too late. I think if Mack and I could say one thing,
No.
it's never too late to get help for your marriage.
When you're sick, you find a doctor, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. When something is sick in your situation, you shouldn't feel bad about getting the remedy and the help needed. And, if your marriage is not prospering or doing well, it might be sick. So you need some help from people that can help.
That's really good.
But you have to be honest, and that's the key. A lot of times.
And that's kind of hard to
to
admit your shortcomings, to say, I'm going to let these people come in and fix me.
We were on a training earlier, and they were talking about how honesty or hearing the truth is very difficult because it upsets everything. Like when you get the real truth, it upsets everything. And so that means, we have some work to do. I have to begin to change my perspective, change the way I respond, the way, all of those things. And that's work. And I think sometimes that's the part that people are afraid of is putting in the effort and the work.
And a lot of times too, what we like to say, what we've learned, in this whole process is that sometimes that work has to be in a controlled environment. Because a lot of things that we talk about that we thought we were trying to fix wasn't getting fixed, and it wasn't until, it wasn't until we sat with somebody else and they were able to walk us through that process where when we left that counselor, all of that time later, we really knew that, man, we're not as perfect as we thought we were, because he would just literally let us, he would call us out on things. But he said, "Oh, Mack, that's a lie," or "Oh, Renee, that's not the truth." And it'd be in a joking way, but he would make it so where he knew he'd been doing that 60 years. So it's like honesty. If you're gonna sit and invest your time, and you really want things to work, you have to be honest about yourself first. your marriage,
For sure.
and your spouse.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
he's like third on the list.
Yeah.
So the problems that you're having in your marriage, I
I
like
love
to
that.
tell people, start with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Start
Yeah.
with you.
I love that he's third on the list.
He's
so
third.
and all that finger pointing,
all that
you
he
gotta
can
stop
do,
all that finger
that's it,
pointing.
he third on the
It's
list.
on me.
That's it, he third on the list.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
So good.
So I guess, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, and you talked about, your work and being the executive and coming home. One of the other things that we really admire about you guys is your business sense. Both of you guys are very successful business entrepreneurs. And so what I wanted to talk about was like, how do you balance that out, entrepreneurship with marriage, and each of you, again, in your own right, are successful in different industries, and so just kind of talk a little bit about that. Maybe how did you maybe just start or decide that this is something that we want to do, and then, like I said, how do you balance that to where is it something where this is the entrepreneur, this is the business, this is the marriage? Does it kind of bleed over, or how do you manage all of that?
It bleeds.
You got sometimes put some boundaries on. Somebody tell you don't.
But as a business partner, Renee is a very good business person, and like we take traits from each other and kind of combine our team together. I know I'm a communicative person. I talk to people. Renee is not one who likes to communicate with people. She's on the back burner. She does the business aspect. She has a degree at MBA in business accounting. So that part of the business works out well. Just finding time to downtime and to not be in a business mode all the time. Be in a husband and wife mode. And sometimes Renee will tell me, I just don't want to talk about that right now. And I'm coming home from a certain time, I said, this needs to be done before then. But we give each other's boundaries, where at a certain amount of time during the day, that can wait till tomorrow. We shut off phones, we stop communicating. I'm bad because I'm always in that mood. It doesn't have to stop for me.
That's his nature.
It can just ride all the time. But she helps me to realize, Mac, there's a time where other people want your attention as well. So you might want to just stop and give full attention to the people at dinner. Because I'm bad. I might get on the phone and hit a couple of texts and we're at dinner. Let's be involved with what Maya's doing today and what everybody's doing today, and be in the moment today. And so those are the things you have to constantly remind yourself of, because you can be in a paper chase all the time if you don't set the boundaries, for yourself.
Like you said, we've probably been doing this since 2000. I think you and Myron had maybe 2008, somewhere around that time frame, when he and his brother have a partnership. And then, so that's separate. So Mac and I also, have come together for Kingdom Living for business, as far as housing for our population. And we have Heaven on Earth Network that serves the elderly and disabled. And I can honestly say that, coming from that corporate environment and bringing that in, he would always say, I'm behind the scenes. I don't necessarily have to be in the camera. But when there comes to conflict, he's better equipped for that. That's him. Now, if we're filing and doing paperwork, that ain't him. We always laugh about that. Be like, wait, I gave that to Dad. Mac, where that? Oh, it's in the back of my truck. Been there 2 weeks. But he didn't follow through with that. But the thing is knowing what we're good at and really allowing those people to maneuver. Because for me, Mac is a coach also. So basketball is his passion, and we honor that. That comes first. So that means Renee is on the backside doing all the other stuff. And what he allows me to do and how it works is that he said, okay, you need a person for that. You know, when the plate starts to get too big because I think I'm superwoman and I can do it all, you know, my helpmate comes in and say, hey, you need to hire somebody for that. You need to do that. That's too much for you. You know, we're not as young as we used to be, you know. So how it works is that in a caring relationship, even in business, it's like a marriage. You know, when you
somebody be overwhelmed.
and when you start stressing, you know, you bring that home. And so what happens when I'm stressed and I start bringing that home? It affects this. And so when it affects this, then he's trying to get the solution because, you know, we need a solution. And so we have boundaries. You know, Mack never turns it off. I tell him all the time, you don't have to answer every call. There's voicemail. You know, they will leave a message if it's important. And he laughs, but he does that. For me, I don't. I have to have time to shut it down, and we have to get away. You know, and so the way we do that is that we just try to respect those boundaries, and when it does flow over, you know, we have to do what we have to do because as entrepreneurs, there's nobody else to do it. So that's the thing.
That's awesome.
That's so good. Just to keep how you guys navigate that, and you figured out, you know, what works for you, you know, and I think that's important because a lot of times couples, they'll see a Mack and Renee and it's like, oh, we need to do what they do. Well, that may not work for you. You have to, you can apply some of the tips, you know, but it may not perfectly work for you. So you have to figure out what works best for you. You know, which takes communication. It does. You know, which takes honesty.
And I mean, honesty and communication is so important in your marriage as well as anything we do as partners in a business. Because I need to be able to trust him and he needs to be able to trust me. So if one of us are ever out of conflict, you know, I tell people all the time, there is nothing I do in the business or the marriage that he doesn't know about, whether he's there or not. You know, because I tell people, Mack got 5 jobs. You know, and on any given day, you know, whatever that, but Renee don't, you know, so I'm focused in on whatever that is, but I promise you, whatever, you're not going to come back and say something to him, he's going to be like, hey, you didn't, now sometimes I do, because I forget, it's a million things, but the point is that you have to trust your partner, both in marriage and in business, and if you don't have that, success will not be your goal. You'll just be living and working a job, you know, and that is the important thing. It's just really trusting each other and knowing that he has my best interest at heart and I have his best interest at heart.
You know, it's so strange. I listen to a lot of people, and in their conversations, they have separate bank accounts. And one thing that my mother told me a long time ago when I first got married, that if you divide your money, she has hers, you have yours, you're going to have a very difficult time of acquiring something. And I can say that since we were married from a very young age, when we did not have very little, it was always transparent of where our finances were. Even to the point where we would argue about the last $20. And it's just so strange to say that those same arguments that we used to argue about, God has blessed us where those things are no longer considered. But we did have those $10 financial.
Because money was, you know, I think, you know, marriage and money, money is up there. The lack of it, or you know, the lack of it. And I would tell, I have a friend who I used to work with at North in the very beginning, like Max said, when we were young, when we got married, we always tied. Always, no matter where we was, no matter how much we made, because we truly believe in the tithe. And so when we would talk about that early in our marriage, you know, we had an understanding of what that was. So when we would say, hey, you don't have separate bank accounts, you know, a house divided will never stand. As far as I'm concerned, that's a division. And unless you coming together in all things that are
that's a big separation. Hiding money. Distributing money other places.
You're allowing the enemy to come in and get a foothold.
And break the
and it's the little things. You know, we talk about the big things, but it's really those little things that kind of add up and make that exactly to the point where you can have a business together. Because if I'm, like Max said, we have separate accounts and we doing separate things, we need all of that to come together. Yes, you're really roommates.
You know?
You're really roommates. You need all of those things to come together in order to have any kind of business. It really is, you know, it really is. It's important to have, you know, your vision and what God has given you and the talents that he's given you. And like, you know, we always say you can't hide your talents.
Right.
You know, you can't go dig them, you know,
Right.
and hide them and keep them from the world. So we like to share with people, you know, some nuggets, but we found too that we have to be very selective about that because people see this and think this came overnight.
Yeah.
This was a process.
Yeah.
You know, we have went from, you know, living on D. We like our little story in Lake Charles, from Dee's Port, our little townhouse in Dee's Port, to our house on Rose Street, to Country Club, to here.
Yeah.
And you know, you have no idea
Come on.
all that went into this, because I truly believe that's just a manifest of his blessing of things that have been poured into us and through us.
Yeah. That's so encouraging. Like, you just completely encouraged me right now. Like, I felt it.
You know what I mean? And it's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, it really, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, but it's fun and it's
Yeah.
good when you're doing it with somebody who truly loves you and respects you and wants the best for you.
Yeah.
And that's how we feel this day.
She said this day.
This day, because tomorrow, you know, you might not feel
I
it.
get it. Be open and honest about everything.
Yeah, that and even in itself, just, you know, again, and that's what, you know, we when we do like premarital kind of stuff, we try. There's no, I would tell our couples, there's nothing that we can do to really prepare you for this, because like you said, you got different stories. You grew up different. We don't know. You know, I can't predict the future, unfortunately. If I could, you know, I'd probably be a wealthy man, you know, or wealthier man. I'll say that. But just, you said a key word in this process.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning to do after 20 years is I'm learning to love the process.
Right.
And if you can love the process of growing together, and I mean, if you do all the things that are necessary, success is a given.
Yeah. It's coming.
But it's the process, and I think that's, you know, where a lot of people, it's like you said, they want it. You know, they look at Mack and Rene like that now. You know, and it's good that you guys, and again. And that's why, like I said, we look to you guys, and it's not that we put you on a pedestal, but we're saying, you know what? If God can do that for Mack and Rene,
Absolutely.
you know, and if we stay true to ourselves,
That's right.
then man, you know, He can do that for us too.
Yeah. And absolutely, because like I said, these, you know, I say this all the time. The last 10 years of my marriage have been the best years of my marriage. And that's because of the process from 2010 to 2021. And it took a lot of work, it took a lot of sacrifice, it took a lot of commitment. But at the end of the day, it wasn't until we agreed and we're on the same page that, hey, we do want something better than this. You know, we don't want that anymore. You know, we want to change. And until that happens in your marriage, I think God, first of all, I know He honors that. And when He honors that, it trickles into every aspect of your life. Your family, your children, your businesses, your employers, your employees. So it really trickles over. And people, you know, we were talking about that this weekend, is that you just have to make the first thing you have to do is just say, I want to change. You know,
That's good.
I want to change, because as long as we're still sitting there demanding our own way, and it's going to be this and it's going to be that, it's got to be, you know what, God, I just want to change.
So a good habit that I used at learned in counseling was, if you're putting people first, it really helps, and you'll see reciprocal things. I mean, I would purchase small things for my wife, then before you know it, some of the small things that you like were being considered. And before you know it, because of your consideration for somebody else, you start seeing things reciprocally, you know, in other areas, you know, just all around the house. Like, no, I got new socks now. And, you know, small things that you start to think about for your convenience. when you put other people first,
That's good.
you'll see reciprocally
That's good.
those things.
And that's really good that you brought that up, because a lot of people think that it's the big things,
Yes.
and it's not. It's like I was listening to this podcast. I can't remember who it was, but he said he was counseling this couple, and the wife was just really upset, and she's airing out all of her complaints. Then the husband goes, "I just took you to Paris," and he was like, he thought it in his mind that this man, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people who how many of your friends have been to Paris? But those things are great. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But going to Paris once in a lifetime does not replace 20 years of misery.
That's
right.
Going unmet. So that's one thing. And here's a tip for you. Tanya, she loves to put stuff in the cart in Amazon. She'll just put it in. So I'll just go in there and I'll just go and click buy. And like you said, it's not nothing. It's
nothing big.
$20-$30 dress or something. And she'd be like, "Oh, you ordered that for me?" Yeah, I sure did. But that goes a long way.
It
It
does. It means that you thought of me.
That's
you were thinking about me.
That's
You were out. You were even if it's Walmart, and you grabbed this for me. Thank you.
That's true. I feel the same. I think that's pretty much Mac always tell me. Mother's Day is every day. Or something like that. And I was like, in actuality, that's something I have to work on. That's one of those things I've discovered after 30 years of marriage that I really need to break. That just because Mother's Day, birthday, you all want to be honored and get those things, but they don't equal how he feels about you.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
if he didn't give me flowers for Mother's Day, doesn't mean he doesn't love me.
Right.
He gave me flowers 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or he gave me flowers. We have to stop holding our houses, our spouses are responsible for every little thing and thinking and attaching a material thing onto that.
Right.
And like it's like your friend said, I went to, but what did you do for me?
Yeah.
That's in our mindset. And so that's something we have to work on too.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how, I don't laugh about it, but I think it's funny. It's like you spend all this money on flowers for Valentine's Day, which they double the price, which I'm not saying don't buy them, but what I'm saying is you do all of that, but you won't invest the money to go to a counselor or to go and do the things that are really. And I buy Tanya flowers because she likes them. I don't like buying flowers because they're gonna be dead in 3 days. And I'd rather take that money and get you, something else. But
Very expensive.
but I do it because I know she likes
they
it.
like.
That's
But it's always funny, how that works. And so that's what I think you guys were bringing that up, and it just reminded me to do the small things.
Yes.
To get back to doing the small
important.
things. And even if it's doing a load of laundry.
Yes, amen.
or bringing the clothes to the laundry room.
Whatever it is, the little things that
they falling over.
Yeah.
We need to go. We gotta wash. So it's the little things.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
I want to talk about one more thing, and we'll kind of wrap it up. But you talked about trust. That's the word you brought up when you were talking about the business thing. And I know that's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people have been hurt. And I think it's really, even in marriage, you would think that it's okay, I love this person. I'm going to let all my walls down and just totally give myself over to this person. And even just thinking about it, I'm like, whew. When you put it that way, when I'm giving everything that makes me, this person has now access to that, and they have it in their hand, and they can do with it whatever they will. How do you develop that in marriage, or how have you guys been successful in developing that?
That's a deep one. Huh? Okay, I'll go first. Trust is when you lose it, it is probably the most difficult one thing to get back because you never fall out of love.
Yeah.
But trust is something totally different. And I can speak for me, and Mac can speak for him on this self. So when you have anything, even in your marriage, and you have a union that's been broken, and you know, whether it's through communication or an affair or whatever that is, you know, we've had to walk through that, you know, and on that sense. This is what I had to do. I really had to pray. Because once we decide to come back together, trust doesn't come automatically.
Yeah.
And people think it's a switch that you just flip on. Because you reconcile and you forgive someone, trust has to be rebuilt. And the way you do that is not holding a microscope up to him and watching him every single thing he does, all his phone calls. You can't, that's not trust. So my thing was, be anxious for nothing. That was my favorite scripture. Every time I get anxious, because when he leaves, I'd be anxious. You know, what is he doing? That capture every thought, and to take every thought into captivity. And I'd be like, Father, this was my revelation. You made him. You created him just like you created me. You want the best for me. I'm the crown that sits on his head, so I know when he walks out that door, Father, you're going to make sure that he does what he's supposed to do. And if he don't, then you're going to bring it to his remembrance while he's here. I said that every single time he would leave the house. Until it became, as far as the east is from the west, his sins I know not. I only try to judge him, and not even judge him, but just in the present. So once I rebuilt that trust within me for him, it was really nothing he could do other than say, hey, Rene, I'm going to the store. I'll be back in an hour. And guess what he had to do? He had to go to the store and be back in an hour, because an hour and 5 minutes, you know, I got to go pray. You know, I can't be anxious. You know, the mind starts. And it's real. You know, and so I tell women who I talk to is that if you're trying to do that, you got to take the pressure off him. And it's about you, because if you say you're coming back and that's what you want to do, then he can't make you trust him. You have to, just like we have to forgive, you have to eventually get to that place where you trust or you don't. But you can't keep that. So that's kind of how I walked myself back to the place where I knew God was in it. I knew the restoration was it. That's why I tell people it doesn't matter about where you are in a process with your marriage. He can do what only he can do, and give you back better than anything that you could have tried to change.
And then the person who has violated trust has a responsibility as well, you know, to be accountable and to be more accountable, so that there's a peace of mind with the person that you have violated. So sometimes you have to go a little bit above and beyond, especially during some time period, to show, you know, that I'm trustworthy. You have to be very, very accountable, and probably more transparent than you would have normally been, because you've lost a few privileges. You know, until the trust is at a point where everybody is comfortable.
Is that and that there's peace in the house.
And that may not be overnight. That may not be a year. That may not be 2 years. So when you got to be willing to bite that bullet and make sure that you are now building trust. And sometimes it's rough, because something might look strange. Like, I'm going out of my way to make sure things are. But through God and through prayer, you got to continue to go forward, and through that,
you see the changes.
the truth will be revealed.
That is so good.
So I'm so glad you said that, Coach, because so many, when dealing with couples who've been in a similar situation, so many men will say, you know, well, you know, I'm not doing this, I'm not, you know, all of this, and it's been a month, it's been 6 months, it's like,
and you expect, you want people to change immediately, and all you want is, as the person is, you want everything to go back to normal. And unfortunately, that does take a process and some time.
And it does. And when you were saying about trust too, one of the things you said, Glenn, was we say, you know, when we make ourselves vulnerable in marriage, you know, you do make yourself vulnerable in marriage. And so if you can imagine over 20 plus years, you know your spouse better than, we always say that Mack knows me better than anybody. I know him better than anybody. And when you reveal things, the worst thing we did and the best thing we learned is that I have to feel safe.
Yeah. Yes.
And that was one of the things that came with trust.
Yeah.
If I can't trust you, I surely can't feel like you got my best interest at heart.
Yes.
And so one of the things I had to develop with trust is that when we start walking this back and coming back to where we should have been 30 years ago, is that I need my husband to make me feel safe. That means whatever I tell him is entrusted to him, never to be used against me.
Absolutely.
And so what young people experience in that immaturity of marriage, guess what we do? We use it all against you. And it creates, like Mack said, it creates this thing in us where we're holding all of this and we're all this unforgiveness and things that have been said. So once we develop the trust aspect of it, if I'm in a bad situation, this is, other than my Heavenly Father, this is who I'm calling.
Absolutely.
Or if I'm not doing something right, or something's off with me, I expect him to know, and he notices those things, So it's being in a safe place where those words and those deeds and those things that are going on in your marriage, if you don't feel safe with your husband, you have to go back to why I don't trust you, because that's really what you're saying.
Right. And that may not even be about him, but it's about you. And that's where I think we talked about counseling, the individual work comes in that, because that could be very well something from your childhood that you haven't dealt with. And you just bring
rejection,
it. Yes,
all of that comes out of counseling. And that's why I said, even in that controlled environment, we both brought a lot of rejection and abandonment issues. And I realized all these years, I terrorized him. And it wasn't even about him.
Wow.
It was really about me. It was about my abandonment issues, my rejection. So anything that even vaguely looked like rejection, I took it times 10. And so now it's like you have to realize that, in order to be safe and to have that trust and to be able for somebody to open up and express those things to you, you have to almost be the safe for it.
Yeah.
You cannot let that out without permission.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we do now, is that when we get into those discussions or those heated conversations where we try to keep our voice low,
Exactly.
the clue is never to make it personal.
Yeah.
Because we can't take that back.
Yeah.
And then it sets you back.
What you say is very, very important. Nothing else. What you say, communicate with the words that come out of your mouth. Especially when you're arguing. Can be so detrimental for long periods of time. So words
That's right.
be careful, be slow to speak, as I said.
Think about
think about before you let that into the atmosphere.
And that's a skill that has to be learned.
It has to be.
Something you have to work on.
Because it's like we're programmed biologically to defend ourselves.
Yes.
And we can come out with the sword pretty quick. But another thing that you said I thought was so great, another thing that is so important, and it's kind of, I don't know, say what came first, the chicken or the egg, but you talked about your rejection issues. And now that Mack is aware of that, I know for me with Tanya and for each other, we know each other's stories. And so a lot of times when Tanya responds, and this is 20 years in, I now recognize she's not responding to me, she's responding to her child. And I have to remind her in a loving way, hey, that's not me. I'm not trying to, belittle you, or I'm not trying to, do, what I'm saying? So I have to remind her I'm not that guy. And that helps her to de-escalate, to know, but again, I can't do that if I'm taking it personal. So just knowing that really helps. So man, this is, you guys have, dropped some heavy nuggets, but I have one more question for you. And it's this. So you've been married for 30 years. So if you could go back to 1991, what is it, May 25th. A day before us. May 25th. Not a day before. We were married May 26, 2000.
Right, 10 years.
10 years later.
What a day.
But if you go back to 1991, May 25th, and talk to yourself before, it's like, you're in the room getting dressed, and if you could talk to yourself before, what would you tell yourself?
I say this all the time, but it's not. I know divinely it's not true. I say all the time, if I would have waited a little longer to get married, I'd probably been a little bit more mature. But that was not the plan. The plan was for me to go through what I had to go through at that period of time, and cultivate it so where I would be at the point where I am now today. But I would just say that I probably would have been a little bit more mature and would have had more experiences before I got married, because God knows I had very little experience and had seen very little experiences in the world when I did get married. So I would advise people to take time to know yourself, know everything about yourself, and give yourself some time to experience some life before you make the ultimate commitment and bring somebody else into your life and other people into your life that's that you're gonna have to be accountable for.
That's good. That's good. I think I would say to myself at that age, like Mac, I think, and we've told our adult children this too. Wait, just there's no hurry. There's really no rush, no time frame. Just give yourself an opportunity. If you're going to college, graduate from college, or you got a job, get your feet wet. Learn to live with yourself first. That's what I've never been without somebody.
Me either.
And so I've never learned to live with myself. And so when you bring that self, I would just tell my young self, you know what, live with you, know you. Because there is nothing worse than two insecure, people coming into a marriage trying to build their security around another person. And so I would just say, you know what, slow down, enjoy this life. That love will not leave, and don't be so emotional.
Easier said than done. Easier said than done. A little bit.
Bring it down.
Bring it down, because I came out like that. Bring it down. So that's what I would say.
Very good.
That's
so
awesome.
good.
That's awesome. Well, man, we want to thank you guys so much for this
absolutely.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Like I said, we really appreciate your lives, the lives that you live, and it speaks volumes. And I don't know if you know this. I don't know who else is watching, but we watch. And we enjoy that. And like I said, there are some couples that we look to and we say that's a great example of what love looks like, what family looks like, what marriage looks like.
Yeah, we do love each other, to be honest with you. God knows some of the stuff we did that we were out of here.
Yes.
So we
That's
just want to thank you guys for that. Before we close, is there anything that you want to, as far as what you guys have going, that you want to, let people know about, or any social media stuff you want to give out?
Honestly, no, I mean, the work that we do, individually and to collectively, the businesses that we have, they have their own space and their own right. Okay. And so, in honoring your show, Marriage Matters, I just would like to say, be real, be transparent, be honest, and just communicate openly, because you cannot get the help that your marriage needs if you're in secret.
So good. Thank you for that. We definitely appreciate y'all's openness and vulnerability today. So thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you for what you do.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. Man, this has been great. Look, share this. This is 30 years of experience. You typically, if you don't go somewhere and pay for this.
You're gonna pay.
You know what I'm saying? It ain't cheap. So you got advantage. So share this by all means with your spouse or people that would really learn from this. So that's all we have for you this week. So this is Glenn and Tanya Coleman along with Mack Rene Guillory, reminding you that your
marriage matters.
We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.